Excellent, cool. So I
Great.
was going to say, Tom is the mastermind of these things, but then I said you were the mostermind because there was a lot of feedback, there was iterations, and
Yeah.
and we've talked a lot about that. But also, Tom was instrumental in helping come up with the cards methodology as well. So Tom has been. When did you start being involved in MTF?
2016, 17.
16 was Berlin.
Oh, then before that.
Okay, 15. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so Tom has been with us for a little while, and one of the things Tom does and does very well is develops educational programs with design and technology. He currently works in Britain. We are on a mission to convince him to move to Sweden, but so far it's Zoom calls. But I asked Tom to come along. I know he's done some kind of instructional videos and written a whole lot of instructional tutorials on GitHub and provided all the code that you need for these things. But what I wanted Tom to talk about today a little bit is how to take the project where you're at the moment and take it to the next level. So Tom, let's hear about iteration.
Thank you very much. I didn't hear that performance beforehand, but it looked very exciting from the back. I saw the back of the head and some arms, and that looked pretty cool.
Recorded it, Tom.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to talk to you a bit about iteration. You're already started your project. You already have ideas, I hope, and you're already starting to make stuff. And you've probably already done some iteration already. You've already changed some things to make your ideas better. So actually what I want to do is show you a project that I've been working on that has had lots of iterations since 2015, which is when it started. So I'm going to share my screen so you can have a better look at, I assume that you guys can see my screen when I share it. We don't want Zoom, we want this one. And go back a bit because I'm not there yet. Cool. So I'm going to talk about iterating a project. An iteration means like doing the same thing over and over again. But when it comes to iterating in design, you need to change things a little bit before you do it again to make it a bit better. And the musical experience that I'm going to go through is I've been using Twitter a lot as a source of data in order to make some musical installations. I refuse to call it X. That's the stupidest thing in the world. And this started back in 2015. So this was one of my first instruments I built that used Twitter to control it. It had a little Raspberry Pi running on it that had some custom Python code that I wrote. It's the first piece of code I ever wrote. So I decided to go quite sort of big to begin with. And what it did is it looked at my Twitter account and it would find the last person who sent me a tweet and it would take their ID number and then it would take that ID number and it would have to flip it around because most numbers started with the same sort of sequence. And then it separated it into individual numbers. So if their user ID ended in 4567, it would turn it into 7654 and split them into individual numbers. Then on the back of my instrument, it has these things called relays, which are ways to turn electrical things on and off using a microcontroller. And so all of the motors were assigned to a number. And the code would then turn those relays on based on the number of the person who last sent me a tweet. So it's all a bit kind of confusing. And the motors would spin and all the motors had little bits of string on them and they would hit these musical strings, which had a contact mic on so you could hear the strings really clearly. So there's 16 strings all being played by 8 different motors. And I've got a little sound clip. I was so busy when we actually did this that the only video I got of it was of somebody else recording it on their potato phone back in 2015. So it sounded like this. You can kind of hear some melody in there.
I'm afraid, Tom, got no audio coming from your video.
Nothing at all. Oh no.
Share, click the...
Oh yeah, I need to do the share sound as well, don't I? There you go. Let me try that. Let me try again. It might be a bit noisy.
Right.
Yes, no. hear that? Yeah, cool, right. So when I first, cool, thank you. When I first exhibited this, it was at the Tate Modern in London at the Turbine Hall Festival. And I learned quite a lot about having it in front of the public. They liked it. It was hard to hear because it's a ginormous hall full of lots of other exhibits at the time. So that was one thing. One other issue was a lot of people didn't have Twitter accounts on their phones, and so they couldn't just instantly interact with me. So that's something I learned quite early on. Is that I'm not reaching all of these people who just don't have Twitter. So that was a big thing that I had to rethink when I wanted to make this better, when I iterated on this design and made it a better project. So my next step, instead of having the melody playing, I decided to turn it into a beat machine, a rhythm making instrument rather than melody, because rhythms tend to be a bit easier to hear in a big environment. So this one, it did some similar things. So it took the user ID of the last person to send me a tweet. And instead this time it sent those numbers to a piece of software called Pure Data, which is like a musical hacking software, which is quite useful. And it converted it to MIDI notes instead. And this way I was able to give it a bit more control and a bit more interesting rhythms. Then those MIDI signals would trigger a data machines kit, which triggered solenoid motors. And those motors would then hit things to make various noises and go boom bap and all sorts of funky things. So this was me testing it out at home. This would just play the beat on a loop until somebody else sent me a tweet. And not something my wife enjoyed terribly because it was sort of going for quite a long time. But this was quite a nice version of this instrument. And I'll stop it now. I first did this on a giant wall at another big festival in London at the Truman Brewery. So this was all on the wall and people would stand in front and they'd send me a tweet and they'd change the loop as it was going. I also set this one up at MTF Stockholm. So when we did a big event in Stockholm, I made a mini version of this. But with this, I changed it slightly as well. So it wouldn't go on a loop forever and ever and ever. It would play it for like 4 bars and then just wait until somebody else sent me a tweet. So that was another little change I made to make the whole experience better for everyone involved and everyone in the room. And I also made a tubular bell version, so it played quite loud melodies as well. So all the rhythm, all the different notes are being controlled by whoever last sent me a tweet. And it'll change every now and then. But I still had the issue that not everyone had Twitter in their pockets. And when they came to these events, when they walked up to my installations, they didn't really have a great way to interact. So my next step was to actually think, okay, well, I'm not going to convince everyone to get Twitter. So how else could I use Twitter to have these musical experiences? And that's when I came up with this version. So this is my installation called Hope versus Fear. And how this works is instead of waiting and looking at my account, it looks at the whole of Twitter and it looks for any mentions of the words hope or of the words fear. So in all of Twitter, it didn't have to be a hashtag. It could just be any tweet, any bit of text that has about one of those 2 words. And then again, it would send that data to Pure Data. So every time it said the word hope, it would send a message to Pure Data. Every time it said fear. And then Pure Data would compare how many times those words got mentioned over a period of time. And then if Twitter was feeling more hopeful, it would play these singing bowls in an ascending tone. And if Twitter was more fearful, it would play the singing bowls in a descending tone. So you could hear if Twitter was being more fearful or more hopeful at that moment in time, because all the data was being streamed live. It was like an instant way to get a general feeling of the globe. So this screen here, I had all the texts scrolling on the right-hand side so you could read if you were quick, because it happened, you'd be amazed how quickly this would be happening. I'd get maybe in a second, I'd get maybe 5 instances of hope and 20 instances of fear. It was really quick when this was going on. That part in the middle was the actual pure data patch that was doing all the computing, and I made it do a little graph so you could see sort of the trends of if it was more hopeful or more fearful. Then on the left, I had some visuals by this incredible artist called Jake Dubber, whose dad is in the room with you. And so he did some visual art that would respond to the same thing. So when it was hopeful, the visuals would like spread out from the inside and give light. And then if it was more fearful, we'd have some dark sort of wormy things coming in from the outside. So instead of people being not being able to interact at all, it was a slightly different way where everyone could experience just the whole globe, I guess. I've got a little video of it in action. Let me skip forwards a bit to over here. So you can see how quickly the tweets go on the right-hand side. And this was shot in my classroom, so it wasn't in a noisy exhibition. When I did this again at the Tate Modern, and I put microphones in the bowls as well, so you could actually hear it because these bowls are quite quiet. It's quite a peaceful thing. So this is where I got to before Elon Musk took over and took away access to the API of Twitter, which is now basically impossible to get access to unless you pay, and I refuse to pay. So I need to come up with some different ways to have my work interact with people. I'm going to show you a few more little things I did with this, because Twitter was a really useful and fun tool to get randomized data. And this app here is called Endless Studio, and it was developed by a guy called Tim Exile, who's another old MTF person. And this is a great collaborative tool for making music online with people distance-based. And I decided to use it completely in the wrong way. So this is not how you're meant to use this software, but I used Twitter and another messy pure data patch to give it randomized inputs, and I would get music that would end up like this. So this could literally go on forever and ever, and it would slowly evolve and slowly do little repetitions and loops. And I've got like a half-hour recording of it somewhere where it doesn't, it's basically like algorithmic music. Yeah, it's quite fun. And then one last example of Twitter-based stuff, not you. So during lockdowns, I got commissioned to write some music in response to what was going on. And I teamed up with an amazing violinist called Nick Murray. And we used some of the Twitter data based around hope and fear in order to be the structure of some music that we were composing. So this track here is, half of it is written by data and the Twitter stream that was coming in, and then the other half was us responding to it musically. So I'm going to play a little clip of this. does that. So when I started way back in 2015 with thinking, oh, how could I use sort of this data source in my designs, in my work, in my projects, I didn't stop at the first thing and think, oh, this is great, this is done, this is, I'm happy, this is the final thing. I went through the design process. I iterated. I did the same thing over again, but slightly different. So I created the first thing, and I went and I tested it with the public. I went and took it to a massive exhibition. There was about 8,000 people through the door that day, and everyone interacting with it in different ways. Some people just didn't understand it, and I realized I had to change. I had to test it. I was testing it. I had to learn from it. And then when I learned what needed to be done better, that's when I went back and created the next version. And this is the simplest diagram of this process. If you look online for iterative design, like flowchart, there's loads of really complex ones with like tiny little circles and feedback loops and all that stuff. But this is really the gist of it. This is what you need to take from this, is that you can test things in different ways and you can learn from them in different ways. And they don't have to be massive changes to make them better. You can do something as simple as making sure it doesn't play on a loop forever and ever. And then that will drive everybody in the room insane, to just doing 4 bars or 8 bars of a beat. And then that was like my process in that design. My next step is to think about how I could turn that into, I'm learning how to do WebSockets, and I'm actually using the Pi, this one, to test on that, because this can connect to the Wi-Fi, which I haven't done a lot of yet. I'd be really interested to see if any of you lot have been doing that, because then this could then be part of a interactive audience experience where people in the audience can just get their phones out, go to a website and control an instrument that's playing behind me or something. Don't know yet, haven't got that far. Yeah, that was my that's my presentation on iteration. So that project went through lots of different versions, and you're in the phase where, tiny little changes could make it a whole lot better, but you need to get feedback from people, talk to the people around you, and get them to look at your ideas and say, yeah, but have you thought about this? Did you consider this? Yeah. And that is 10 minutes before the end of my time.
Just in time for some questions. Tom,
Yeah, cool.
thanks very much. And to go from something that seemed like it sounded
Rubbish.
like what it was. No, it sounded like what it was. It was randomized data coming in from the web, generating melodies, and then to turn into something so beautiful as that piece of music we heard, as a path that goes on. I mean, it shows what your thinking leads you to, but obviously somebody else's thinking might lead them a path that goes in a different direction. I could see some sort of nods of recognition of things coming up. William, did you look like you wanted to respond in some way?
Oh, no, not really. But yeah, he mentioned something that got me really excited. So
okay,
I'll continue down that track. But yeah, getting him further on one of those would be great. Yeah, for sure.
Fantastic.
I have a question.
Tim, Tim's here. I don't know if you can see Tim.
Yeah, I can see Tim. Hey, Tim. Good to see you
I
again.
have a question for you.
Yeah.
So in that circle you showed, it goes on and on and on. And how do you deal with feeling done, or when do you feel like you shouldn't go on, and when's the next phase?
For me, because I'm an artist and a musician, I don't think it does ever end. I think it just goes on to the next one and the next one and the next one. Obviously, if you're developing a product or a design that you intend to take to market, you'll get to a point where you're happy, or you think you've come up with all the solutions. I mean, that doesn't always work out in real life as well. That's why we get product recalls, because something's gone wrong and they've realized, oh, we need to stop selling these 40 products. So I mean, I think feedback is really important for that stage. So if you get a product where you think, oh, I think it's great, you need other people to look at it so that they can see things that you can't. There's a thing called is it Johari's window, where you can see things and other people can see things from a different perspective and see things that you can't see. And that's a really important way to get the feedback to make the right changes. Does that answer your question, Tim?
Yeah, a bit, because what I'm thinking is the definition of idiocracy is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results.
Oh,
and
yeah,
so
it is.
Very interesting combination of iteration compared to.
I mean, it's iteration in design is like slightly different to just iteration, where you do literally do the same thing over and over again. Because when you use it in design, you do have to make those tiny changes between each step to make it better. So it's doing the design process over and over again, but you don't just do the same product or the same idea. You have to change the idea at least a little bit. Yeah.
I heard this described to me once as the process of what else could this be? If it wasn't this, what else could this be that I've made? And so these ingredients that I have put together, how else could they be put together? Or how else could this, in what other context could I use it? Or those sorts of things. And actually sort of thinking the thing that I've made is not the thing that I've made, but it's something else. What would that thing be? And to me, that's a really interesting way of thinking through a lot of processes. Do you have any other questions in the room? Do you have any other questions in Finland or Portugal?
They look like empty rooms at the moment.
They do, don't they? They can actually hear, but
Okay.
they're also recording and watching back, because both of those are on different time zones too. Portugal's same as Britain, Finland's 2 hours away from you, so so maybe that's sort of entered into it as well. But anybody here have any questions for Tom? Bearing in mind that Tom is the one who built the board, so if you've got any actual practical, I can't make it do this question, this will be your moment. Did you actually, Tim, did you get your question?
It was the cable.
It was the cable.
Oh, we tried different board, we tried different adapter.
Okay.
It was the cable.
It was everything else. Yeah.
Thank God. I hope you did you show the my prototype from this morning?
We did. Your dangerous machine that you built.
I've already taken it apart. That was a bit scary.
Fantastic.
Yeah, but yeah, it was fun though.
All right. Tom Fox, everyone, thank you very much.
Cool. If you have questions about the board, let me know via Dubber or Tim or anyone, and I'll do what I can to help.
Fantastic. One more thing before you go, Tom.
Yep.
I want to make this announcement to the room as well. As most of you are aware, the room that we are in is called Test Husat. It's the testing facility for Umeo Energy, which is the electricity company here. And they have decked out the apartment that's attached to here and this room as well with every possible smart home sensor that you can think of. So temperature, it's got infrared, it knows how many people are in the room, it's adjusting things left, right, and center. Of course, we still have to open the windows to let oxygen in because we're kind of overcrowding it a little bit. But I asked them to give us that data that we could actually take all of the data from this facility for the week and make use of it for anybody's project who wanted to make use of that. If they were to give us the live data, we would have to sign a 2-year employment contract with Energy, but they can give us a static data dump for the whole week of this, or for the past week. They're doing that right now. So Tom, if you're interested in that sort of data, or if anybody here is interested in using that data to either to iterate their own project or to build another project on top of that, or they can think of cool uses for that, I have it available to me. So please ask me and I will give you lots and lots of environmental data for the space that we're in.
Cool. Fun.
Cool. All right, Tom, thank you very much. And we will talk soon.
Yes. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.